What is up, guys? Have a fun video for you today. Today's video is another GWENT tips and discussions. The topic for today is 5 provision cost cards and why they need to be buffed. So to start off, I want to show you a little something over here. This is a Kelly list that you will typically see played in tournaments. Now look at the provisions over here. Do you notice something? They're playing a lot of very high-end provision cards and then a lot of 4 provision cards. Do you know why? Because these cards have such a high ceiling and the 4 provision cards don't play for that much value less than the 5 provision cards. Why not go that way, right? We're only playing 3 5 provision cards. Okay? And the reason for is these cards' ceiling is so utterly high that because you're fitting so many of them, you just have to play a lot more 4 provision cards so you can fit it in there. And like I said, these cards aren't performing that much less than those. Another quick example, just to show, we have like a shield wall deck back when that was super popular. Same thing, we're only playing 3 5 provision cards because your 4 provision cards are absolutely phenomenal. And you really need a lot of these top end cards because, again, their ceiling is just utterly ridiculous. When you get the 10 provision and above, just crazy good value in so many games and are your win condition, right? And GWENT became the game of like draw your golds, right? You guys, I guarantee, have lost so many matches because you didn't draw that one gold card, right? If I had just drawn that card, I would have won. And they doubled down on it. They have so many thinning cards, tutoring cards to try and get you those golds, which is fair. I mean, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is, But I believe I've heard developers talk about this, or just people discussing that the idea with some of, like, the bronze cards are supposed to hit above their provision cost, and then the gold cards are supposed to hit right at or under, with the idea that drawing your golds isn't as important. But that's kind of simply not the case, because sure, 4s usually hit above their provision cost, 5s are all over the bag, it's kind of there. 6s, with the recent buffs they've given to the 6 and 7 provision range, are definitely doing a good job about that. They're about in that, and it's going to kind of flatten out a bit. And then when you get up to like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, even 15 provision cost card, the sky's the limit here. Because they'll play for 20, 30, 40 points. It's crazy. And so, with the original thing, right, we're talking about 5 provision cost cards here, is 5P cards need to be the bronze cards you want to play. They need to hit consistently above their provision cost, right? And if we do that, and we have some of these, mostly 11 and above, but some of the 10s too, if those ceilings are reduced a little bit, then drawing your golds isn't as important, and any hand you have is a very competitive one. And I would really like to see that. Because some of these 5P cards are just a joke. Like, I opened it up with Scout, because what is this? Now, I know it was changed, because originally it was remove all weather effects, which a 5 for 5 for that, can have its place. It's really techy that you're not going to run into, and they changed it so Frost would have a chance. But with Matic and stuff running around, and definitely Frost being pulled back, people not really caring too much for that in monsters, maybe put it back to its other thing. But like the 5P cards, Maxi was this is a really good 5P card. Carryover comes down at least as a 6 for 5, and then you get a good ability. But yeah, 5P cards need to be like that, right? Where none of this, like Peller, should not be a 4 for 5. Right? If it's going to have an effect, it needs to be a 5 for 5 or a 6 for 5. And then it needs to be playing not... Okay, we're getting out here. Like Swallow, right? It's a 6 for 5. No, that should be a 7 for 5. Okay? And then if you can meet certain conditions, you get your 8 for 5. Right? Like A-Rush, susceptible to a lot of things, but that's fine. But like A-Rush, Bear Witchers are a really good example. I almost clicked 8 there because I'm just so used to its power. That's a really good example of what we should have here. But the 5P cards, they just, a lot of times don't play for that much value. So if you're trying to fit in these golds, because remember the golds win you the game, and you're like, okay, I'm a provision over. What are you dropping? Well, you're not touching any of your gold cards because that's going to win you the game. You're going to take one of your 5p cards and you're going to turn it into a 4p card. Because, okay, so yeah, this 4p card plays as a 4 for 6 compared to this 5p card that it plays a 5 for 7. But because I can reduce the provision, I'm only missing 1 point, but now I can fit in this gold card that's going to get me 20 points. That's an issue. So I think 5p cards need to be like, you want to play these. These are the cards you want, and then 4p are just kind of like some nice little fill-in spots. Like, okay, this will help protect that, you know, just kind of a nice little spot. Like this Spies deck that Trinet was running in Slave. See, I really like this provision distribution. Right, we're only playing 3 4p cards instead of 3 5p cards, filling up with a lot of 5ps, and then a little bit more fair distribution up here. But you can see you're not fitting as many gold cards in as you typically want and as you'd see in the other. Like, in the way Gwent is now, you don't want that. It's the issue with like Siege decks in Northern Realms, because you have to play too many 5p cards and you just don't want to. That's why kind of Siege that I see now, they're only running a couple of actual Siege cards and they're relying on just good value NR gold cards to win the game, and just a couple of Siege units to just to proc Siege itself. A lot of Siege there. But I hope this is all making sense. 5p cards just need to fix, and with that you could do stuff for like devotion and then playing neutrals. Like, make some of these neutral 5p cards just so good, so much value that you want to put them in there, but then also give more benefits to devotion, so you have a good choice to make. You're like, okay, do I want to keep devotion for the benefits it gives me, or do I want to break it for these really good 5p cards that are, you know, neutrals? And Maxi's phenomenal example of that, right? Like, Maxi and a Neuromancer are wholeheartedly worth breaking devotion for. So just more examples of that. But I would say a lot of them honestly need to be like 5 for 8s. Again, conditional. It needs to be conditional. But a lot more of them, because some of their ceilings are just so poor. It really sucks. So there's probably, I doubt anything would happen to it. There's probably a lot of ways you could go about it. And many of you may disagree with what I'm saying. And so let me know with that. But I look at slave. People like the buff to slave infantry, right? Because you get an extra point out of it. So you can kind of be playing 9 for 5s. And that's really great. Like a 9 for 5. You have to have some setup for it. But that's what we should do. We should be looking at 8 for 5s, 9 for 5s. That sounds awesome to me. Just meeting conditions. But at the same time, when it got that buff, I was like, honestly, I didn't mind it as a 4 for 4, because that means I can fit in more higher end cards. So I think that about covers mostly what I want to say here. Just trying to skim over it. But again, this doesn't apply. There are some still really good 5p cards. Don't get me wrong. Some of the removal ones can be absolutely busted. Not that one so much in particular, but they can hit well above their provision costs, and you've got some pretty solid engines in there. So it's not all of them, but you look over the 5p cards and you're just like, man, like, why would I ever play this? You know, the list goes on and on. So they've done some good buffs to the 6 provision range. You know, they made a lot of them like 6 for 6 with the lock instead of like a 5 for 7 for a lock. I hope we get that with the 5 provision cost range, because the more we can make it less about drawing your golds, I think the better Gwent would be. Like, there wouldn't just be matches where it's already like, it's over, I didn't draw this forfeit time, right? Or, you know, how many games, if I had just had that, I would have won. So I hope this wasn't too rambly. I hope you guys kind of get a little bit with what I was saying. Maybe you have your own suggestions. But yeah, let me know what you think. I think next topic will be problematic cards. Again, talking about the upper end cards here that just, their ceiling is so stupid high that if they stick, it's almost a win, and if they get answered, it's pushing a lose. So, hint, hint, Ball's gonna be in there. I hate their card. But yeah, there it is. Thank you guys if you watched all the way through. Let me know if you have any recommendations, and I will catch you in the next one.